Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it must be Monday because it's the Wrestling Inc. Raw After Show. Justin LaBar, Jack Farmer, Jimmy Korderas, or as we all call him now, Corduroy. We are in the building. Well, we're not in the building. We're in different buildings, but we're here to talk about Monday Night Raw. And it was okay. There was some stuff that happened. Some newsworthy things happened. Before we get into it, while we wait for everyone to settle in and find their seats, Jimmy, Raw was in your neck of the woods. What kind of stories can you tell us that you're not supposed to tell us about hanging out and hobnobbing with all the WWE brass?
Well, I'm not going to throw. Well, I don't know about brass, but I'm not going to throw any names out there. But with SmackDown being in Montreal on Friday night, it made no sense for the crew to fly home and fly back to Canada and have to cross borders and stuff like that. So everybody kind of made their way to Toronto Saturday and Sunday. So yesterday and Saturday, I got to meet up with a few old friends, and we grabbed a bite to eat and then maybe a pop here and there, and just told some old stories, had some fun, and just reminisced a little bit, but also got to catch up with some good old friends that I miss.
Do you miss when you talk to your friends? Are you like, oh man, I wish I was back on the road? Or are you like, it sounds fun, but I'm glad I'm not on the road anymore?
Now that I am off the road, I don't miss the traveling. I miss the camaraderie. I miss the, you do become like a brotherhood out there. And yes, there are conflicts between some guys. Yes, it's like any family where when people, have disagreements, let's put it for lack of a better term. I miss the guys and gals. I miss the crew, but I don't miss the travel one bit.
Yeah, travel is no fun. But speaking of traveling, next week, Justin LaBar, not to give away the, not to bury the lead here, but that Raw's moving to go into your neck of the woods next week. So are you going to be hobnobbing with the big WWE brass?
You never know. The funny thing is, actually, the hobnobbing with the WWE brass I've done in the past in Pittsburgh, it always happens when I least expect it. It's rarely it's situations that like I'm prepared for, and then like I'm meeting said person at said time. It usually ends up being somewhat of a surprise. So that's why I just, whenever they're in town, it's always fun. You never know who you're going to run into and what situation you're going to find yourself in. I've drafted notes. Maybe one day I'll follow in Jimmy's great footsteps and release my stories. Well, I won't have a WrestleMania main event in my story, I don't think, as Jimmy does. But it might be interesting to some. I gotta say, Jimmy, this is actually I'm excited to see you, but Jimmy messaged in this afternoon and said that he'd be on tonight. And had you not messaged me or had you said, hey, I'm not gonna make it on tonight, when we got to the main event tonight, which obviously we'll get to, and there's a ref down, I was like, oh, come on. We're milking the hometown guys and girls. Yeah. Come on.
You know what? It's funny you said that, because when I saw Charles take the bump, Charles was one of the guys I got together with this weekend, which was cool to see because he's one of my best friends there. But when I saw him take the bump, I was thinking back to WrestleMania 24 when I took the bump and he did the big rundown for me. I almost wanted to return the favor there. I'm watching from home here and I'm going, oh, now I wish I was there to do, you know what I mean? But
see, you were waiting for Jimmy to go make the count. I was waiting for him to help Dexter Loomis and sneak out through the crowd. But there's a lot of people that showed up tonight on Raw. But before we talk about all of them, we have some news. Sounds like the Road Dogg is back as executive, replacing Jeff Jarrett. The Road Dogg has been rehired by WWE in an executive position, according to PW Insider. James had been released by WWE in January after being one of the chief voices involved in the black and gold era of NXT. As revealed in a follow-up report by PW Insider, James will be assuming the position of Vice President of Live Events, a similar gig to that previously occupied by fellow Wrestling Dynasty member Jeff Jarrett. Now, Jimmy, did you have, when you were working with WWE, a lot of interaction with the vice president of live events or a similar role? Had that role not been there when you were around?
I don't remember if somebody was, vice president of live events. I mean, I thought it was kind of like there could have been someone with that title, but I don't recall anybody having that specific title. I thought it was taken care of in a group kind of thing with talent relations. I thought it was part of the talent relations department. I could be wrong. Somebody could correct me if they're listening from back in the day. But even to this day, when I see whether it's vice president or senior vice president of live events, I'm trying to think. So do they book the live events? Do they just oversee everything when everything is put together? I'm not really sure, but I don't recall that position being there when I was there.
I'm sure it's a very busy job, but it sounds like one of those like vice president of specific duties or one of those jobs where you're like, what is that? But I know there's stuff to it. Now, Justin, I definitely want to get your take on this, but I'm a little worried because Wrestling Inc. it's a news site and we have to be fair. We have to be unbiased. But speaking of palling around with brass, I saw a picture of you hanging out with Road Dogg at a football game.
Oh yeah, that was several years ago. But yeah, I mean, he's as anybody that's ever worked with him or met him, he's a really great guy. A tremendous story, obviously, and very open about his, where he's fell short in life and how he's come back from it, and life's given a second chance. It's cool to see, and I'm not surprised to see this. He was head writer for SmackDown for a while, obviously under Vince McMahon's watch, and that's a stressful job. He was his family still living in Florida. He was, I think, living out of a hotel a couple days a week in Connecticut, because that's just what you had to do to satisfy the duties. And then, oh, by the way, you're then flying to TV. So that as it does for many people that are in the writing team, eventually your time's up. You get burnt out, whatever. You're creatively, but with Vince gone and Triple H in the role he is, this made sense. I figured it was inevitable that Road Dogg would find his way back in some capacity, whether it was just an NXT in Florida or in a corporate executive role. Happy for him. I don't think that this is the last of the shakeups, as we'll say, as the new regime, so to speak, is just reshaping their team of who they want in particular places. But very happy for Road Dogg. Yes, that was his first. What Jack Jefferson on Twitter, that was Road Dogg's first. His first Steelers game. He wanted to go to Steeler game, so we took him to a Steeler game a couple years ago. He had a good old time. He was a big fan of the tight end at the time, Jesse James. Go figure.
Oh, of course. Go figure. Yes. I mean, he worked a lot with the Black and Gold brand. Obviously, everyone who watched NXT Black and Gold loved that. So if you were a fan of the Black and Gold brand, probably a good sign for you. And we'll see how it pans out. Again, I don't know exactly what he's doing, but he's been in the business for a while. So I would assume it's a good thing that he's there.
Absolutely, it is. He's a very, very smart man about the business.
And speaking of people who have been around for a while, the Good Brothers sound like they're going to be done with Impact very soon. The word coming out of Impact last month was that the Good Brothers contracts were set to expire at the end of July, but Fightful Select is now reporting that Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows recently agreed to contract extensions that will keep them with Impact through their tapings in Dallas on the 27th. Following these tapings, Gallows and Anderson are set to compete in New Japan Pro Wrestling for a couple of weeks in September. And after that, according to the report, Gallows and Anderson will officially be free agents. Justin LaBar, that means, as us wrestling fans do, we fantasy book and wonder where they could go. If you're a gambling man, where do you think the Good Brothers end up?
Not AEW. I'm going to start there. I think they would even recognize that it is just so busy, and the tag division is so. I mean, I just don't, and they kind of got to work there, but not. They kind of when there was that interesting Impact AEW crossover, last year, they were on, so they kind of maybe got a feel for being there again without having any long term, commitment. And then we're seeing again, and AEW has since signed a lot more guys and girls since. So obviously they do well over in Japan, but I know that for both guys, they have kids and families, and those kids and families are in school and have careers here in the U.S. So them spending 6-month tours or whatever it is over in Japan, and not necessarily conducive to where life's at. So I can see them going over, making a few bucks in Japan while they can. Not to have WWE turn into what we sometimes criticize at AEW, which is how many guys you're going to sign. But certainly it seems like one of Hunter's things that he's trying to do in his vision is he's trying to put again more credibility in tag division, both men's and women's. So I think there's potential there. However, I will say, when the Good Brothers came over to WWE, whatever year that was, 4 years ago, whatever it was, and they had a lot of momentum. Bullet Club was very hot. They don't have that same momentum. Not saying they wouldn't be valuable, but they don't have the negotiation leverage, in my opinion, from third party looking out. They don't have the same leverage that they did. So I'll be curious, does that deter them? Do they say, hey, we could be bigger fish in a smaller pond like an Impact? A lot of things to weigh, but the one I will say is a gamble, man. I don't see them in AEW. Jimmy, what say you?
It's funny you stole my thunder a little bit there. I feel like, because for the exact same reason you said, they are so inundated. They have lots of great talent there, but they just have a finite amount of television space. And yes, everybody talks about, well, they're doing this on your YouTube channel and AEW Dark and all this, but right now the money is in television. And if you're going to sign someone to big money deals, which I'm assuming they would do if they were to sign the Good Brothers to a decent contract, at least for them, you would have to feature them. I just don't want to see them, as I like to say, Justin always kind of alludes to it, the 20 pounds of potatoes into a 10-pound bag. It doesn't do them any favors.
The one thing I will say that AEW always has right now as an argument, like, so somebody's watching, listening to this, who's a big AEW fan who wants the Good Brothers. The one thing they can always argue back at right now until AEW changes is that, where I'm talking about how Good Brothers, how they have families and kids and wives. If you go to AEW, you only got to do TV 1 day a week,
or two,
or
sometimes.
Two. But it's not the same of what It's, I mean, WWE's touring is not as crazy as it once was.
Right.
But it's still, so you're still on the road, probably at least 3 nights, maybe 4 nights a week. So, so that's the one thing AEW always has right now in their negotiation is you can get more time to be at home. And AEW seems to let guys and girls do more conventions, more indie things, so you can make a few side hustles. So that's something I guess I have to acknowledge AEW still has in their pocket for at the bargaining table.
Exactly. And if the financials are anywhere close, from that sense, from a business standpoint, it makes sense. But if you're looking at how you are treated as well, not that you would be treated bad there, it's just, again, there's only a finite amount of television space to be seen 3 hours a week compared to 3 hours in one night that we just saw.
Yeah, unless there's more plans, like to less Tony Khan knows of a Ring of Honor distribution rollout where unless you can pitch to somebody like, hey, you guys are going to be building blocks around that brand. But again, it's all a matter of what's worth it.
Would you guys be open, or would you be excited about a Bullet Club type reunion in WWE, or has that ship sailed for you?
Well,
personally, I feel like I would have liked it, but I feel like it's kind of sailed at this point.
I agree. I think at this time it'd be like one of those, it's a nice little nostalgia thing, golf clap, here we go, it's pretty cool. But at the same time, it's like it's past its best before date, let's put it that way. And I think, though, if you repackage and retool them and rebrand them, I think there's potential there to create a new group that can get over just as big.
Yeah, I mean, if Gallows and Anderson showed up in WWE and you wanted to, and I do think it is past it. I think that ship is sailed. They missed the mark. They missed the boat on it. It's just But if you did, so who are you trying to pair him up with? AJ Styles, AJ doesn't need any redirection. He's doing just fine. He's on Monday night. He's the number 2, 3 babyface.
Yeah.
Obviously getting ready to enter in a very crazy storyline, as we'll talk about. Finn Balor. Some of the best momentum Finn's had in a long while, strangely enough, as a heel, but it's so, like, who are you, what are you going to blow all that up to do something that was hot 4 years ago, but is nowhere near the same? I don't see it.
Yeah. We got a question in the chat from Dylan Matthews, the GIF King, by the way. He asks, or he says, I heard AEW has 170 wrestlers on their books. I don't know what their numbers are. I don't know what on the books means, if it means full time or like counting people who fly in for dark and then do one match or whatever. But
their
do you
books
guys know anything about that?
Well, number? I mean, their books are I don't believe their books are public, so
Right.
who would who would be able to validate that? But I don't think 170 is how many they have signed. I think it might damn well be close to 100 if it's not over. But I mean, yeah, I think if you're trying to get in the 170, maybe 170, like if you want to count number of talents that they have written a check to, if you want to take in consideration, the independent guys and girls who get to have these come in, come out, appear on Dark, appear on whatever, maybe the total number that they've written checks to, maybe in that column, is 170. But in terms of who is obligated and contractually bound to them,
that seems like an astronomical number for them right now. I don't know where that number came from. Could be somebody speculating, but like you said, Justin, it could be just people who have popped 170 different personalities may have popped up on their television / internet channels, but that's about it. As far as like contracted talents, that's an internal number that maybe someone would have to investigate.
And I know that 170 is too many people if it is a real number. Too many people for 3 hours. However, on the other side, I'm glad 170 people are getting a paycheck. That's always a good thing to think about too. But let's get into, speaking of paycheck, what pays the bills is this show. Let's get into it. Before we do, though, always like to say thank you to everyone who is joining us live here in the chat. We got Baby Ice, Peter P, No Bueno Crew, Ethan Cruz, the Tornado, Anthony Y, Marcus Horizon. Let me know if I'm saying that right. Rocky in the chat as well. And Dylan, as mentioned earlier, Tox and Eddie and everyone else. Thank you guys so much for being here with us. Oh, NYC Demon Diva in the chat as well. Shout out to Issa for being in the chat. Thanks for joining along. But also, if you're listening on Spotify or watching this later or Apple, whatever, thanks so much. Do us a favor and leave a review. Leave a 5-star review. The Raw show hasn't gotten a 5-star review on Apple in a while. Go to Apple, leave a 5-star review, and say something really nice on there. I'll read it. Maybe I'll say it on air if it's nice. But if it's mean, I'll probably just have my feelings hurt and cry to myself. But let's get into the show. We have a start to the show, and it's a hot start. It's a fast start. It's a Rollins and Riddle, and it's a brawl, and they're going through the arena and the crowd. And welcome to Monday Night Pyro-fueled Raw. Jimmy Korderas. This is the way to get this show started.
Normally, I would agree with you, but it's because of what came next that I think this was the wrong way to either start the show, or you should have done what came next later, because I think it stole some of that thunder. We'll get to what came right afterwards, but yes, it was a hot start and I was enjoying it. And I was going, this is how you start off a show and you get people interested, you get people invested, and they go, hey, what's happening here? What's happening here? And then you have to think about what comes next sometimes. And what came next kind of was, in my opinion, suffered from it because of that really hot start that the people got into.
Interesting take, because you make a good point. I didn't think about that, but Justin, I'll let you take it from here. But I guess what I like about it is it gives me that feeling of like, I better have all my snacks and drinks ready as soon as the start of the show starts, because they're going to get going. And that's how I felt when this started. But how did you feel about the start and Jimmy's comments?
Well, yeah, I mean, first, it certainly enhances the must-see television aspect to it. You better be tuned in right at the start, and don't walk away. Don't think that what's going to, you're not going to get 3 minutes of recap packages to remind you what's going on tonight. So I like that aspect, and I don't know why. I've always loved, ever since I was a kid, I always loved the set designs and going into the backstage, and that was always fun. And so I can remember in the 90s I'm doing that at different times. I can't remember in recent era, just in the recent staging era that Raw has been in for the last 15 years, basically since they went HD, that they've ever let a camera live go straight through the curtain into the gorilla like that. I mean, that was a fun touch. It was different visually. I understand what Jimmy's getting at, and I know we'll get more to it once we get into the next segment. I'll disagree on this point, though, is that while I can take the argument of your kind of burying then what's supposed to be a big deal of an appearance, it was an honest attempt, because they could, in past times, they would have just tried to start like that. they would have, security would have got those two separated, whatever, and then we would have next entrance. But the fact they even had the announcers go back to what the script is to say welcome on and roll, let's do the pyro now 4 minutes in. If you let yourself, it comes off as we were supposed to start with the pyro and all this stuff, and these guys truly did. They just couldn't be separated, and you're trying to sell the disruption that they're having, the chaos that they were causing, Rollins and Riddle. But Jimmy's point is fair too, as we'll get into. Is do you steal the thunder from what's supposed to be a big deal, hearing this music hit and seeing this appearance by this Hall of Famer?
Well, let us know in the chat if you thought that this disrupted the intro with Trish. I'm very curious how you guys felt, because I think it's a fantastic point. I didn't think about it, but it's a good point. I'm very curious. But let's talk about Trish. She shows up. She says that she feels at home in the ropes, and out comes Bayley. And Bayley doesn't know why Trish is there. And Bayley says no one likes Trish. Bianca comes out and has Trish's back. Bayley has the numbers until Asuka and Bliss come out, and it kicks us off right into the opening match. Asuka and Bliss versus Sky and Kai in the Tag Team Championship tournament. And Asuka and Bliss, this one goes on for a little bit, and the folks who got eliminated watch on. It's a multi-segment match, and it's really exciting, but it was the blind tag by Io Sky who left Kai to get choked out so she could roll up Asuka and get the win for the bad guys. Justin LaBar, I guess first and foremost, is Trish Stratus the most universally loved legend in WWE? I don't know if I've ever heard a single person on Twitter or anything say they don't like Trish.
Yeah, maybe that's a fair question. Trish is pretty over with everybody. I mean, who's got a problem with Trish Stratus?
Yeah, I've never seen a negative thing said about her ever.
I've said this about Jimmy. I've said this about Jimmy. I've said this about Tommy Dreamer. There's a few short list of people I've said that I've gotten to know that have worked at the highest level, that being WWE and pro wrestling. I say I don't know anybody that says anything bad about them. Trish would be another kind of point in there. Look, it was great to see her. I always love using, and I felt like they don't do this enough in the past when we do old school shows and vintage shows. I love trying to give a rub, trying to have a Hall of Famer in there with the current stars and what have you. This was awkward though. The promo was fine, but then the transition that how it went in the match. I mean, and Trish didn't even get physical. It felt like there was supposed to be something more. And then I'll get to it later. I thought later in the show, oh, here's the perfect situation for Trish to come back out, and this will wrap this whole story up, and I can cross out my critique of the opening segment. But it didn't happen. So great to see Trish. She looks a fine wine. Nice to see her with the interaction with the top heel females, but I did feel it was a little awkward trying to go from that promo to the match the way they did.
Yeah, I was confused because it sounded like they were going to do like a 4-on-4 match at some point with the way they were talking about the numbers and things. Jimmy, for you, I wanted to ask, Bayley came out and she said, I don't know why Trish is even here. Why was Trish there?
Trish is she's from Toronto. She's a hometown girl, she's a Hall of Famer, and why not bring out, legends and people that are hugely over, like you guys said. She is over big time. And again, I hate to harp on this point. When you heard that music, the laugh leading into her entrance music, the crowd popped, but it wasn't what I expected. I expected a big resounding, which is why I think that opening brawl kind of took a little bit of the steam out of it. That's what I'm thinking. But at the same time, they still reacted huge to Trish coming out, and she's a Toronto legend. She's actually a part of a show up here in Canada called Canada's Got Talent, which is a spinoff of America's Got Talent, and she's one of the judges up here. That's how hugely over she is.
Which isn't America's Got Talent a spinoff of like England's Got Talent or something? It's all spinoffs of spinoffs somewhere. But yeah, she's so young looking. It almost didn't feel like it was a veteran hanging out with the youth. It felt like just another wrestler with the other. She felt like she belonged in there. It didn't feel like she was someone who came back. She's like the female Billy Gunn. Never ages. Yeah, it was. So it's good on her though. I don't know if that's a fair comparison. No,
it is cool to see her in the ring with the ladies, with the current stars of today, the current women's wrestlers. Because if you look at women's wrestling history in WWE, obviously Alundra Blaze leaves in late '95, early '96, And then women's wrestling really just, then we truly are in the Sable, Braun, Pan. We really are in that era of the Attitude Era. And then, Trish, and then obviously in the company with Lita, they were the first then next attempt to like let women wrestle in the early 2000s. So it's kind of cool to see her in there with Bayley and Asuka and these ladies of today are so well revered for being wrestlers. I thought that was a really cool bridging of the gap moment.
Yeah, it was good to see her out there, and I think I call it a net positive, but I think I agree with both you guys in that the transition into the match was a little clunky, and maybe just letting Trish open things up would have been the right move. But overall, I still think it was a net positive. I do want to say something they mentioned earlier, but I feel like it's just natural, or later, but it feels like it's natural to bring up now. Gigi Dolan was hurt, so they are going to have a second chance fatal 4-way for that spot. That said, Jimmy, I'll start with you. If you could pick Io Sky and Dakota Kai or the Field, anyone else, who do you think's going to win?
Oh,
because if we were gambling, if you're putting money down, you either pick the two that seem like the favorites or anyone else. Where do you put your money?
Sometimes it's good to go with the favorites. I know that you're always looking for someone for value, but at the same time, there's value in the favorites. I mean, they're a hot commodity as heels right now, and they've got a kind of a name that kind of catches on. It's almost like Kai and Tai. It's Kai and Sky. And,
yes,
you know what I mean. And
very evil.
And Bayley has been on fire on the microphone as their mouthpiece. So obviously, you can pick someone else, but I'm going to go with them.
What about you, Justin? Would you pick them to win the whole thing, or if you were in Vegas, you could get the Field, maybe returning tag team, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, or anyone else that comes out?
No, I mean I'm going to go with winning this tournament. It's Kai and Sky, because I think it's like we're seeing that right side of the bracket is just ravaged with booking troubles, and they have to keep whatever injuries and what have you. And it feels like whatever, it doesn't matter. They just have to just complete matches to make the bracket move along, because they know no matter what happens, the entire ending point is to have Dakota Kai and Io Sky, the two returning ladies who are trying to establish this team. Whole idea is to have them standing tall as heels. They think they've dominated the WWE tag team women's world, and then boom, we get a return of two ladies who were supposed to be involved in this all beginning until drama unfolded. Of course, I'm talking about Sasha and Naomi. So it feels like nothing. It doesn't matter what happens on the right side of the bracket. Just the whole point is we just got to get Sky and Kai to the victory lane, to the finish line, and hit Sasha Banks' music. That's all that we're trying to do here.
Well, and as we move on, speaking of hitting music, we got some new music from Finn Balor. He has a run-in with Ziggler in the back, and Finn says, Ziggler, you're just one of these guys that try to attach yourself to young talent, which I thought was just a great line. Ziggler slaps him and then calls him the B word. They also have a match that goes for a few segments here, with Finn getting the win after Rhea Ripley gets involved. Justin, I want to talk to you about this. Is this a new Dolph? I'm loving this. It's not like he's like this totally repackaged, but it just feels like a new energy to Dolph Ziggler.
Yeah, it does. I mean, this guy Dolph continues to reinvent himself so many times. I mean, there's been so many rumors over the years of like, oh, Dolph's leaving, or look at the way they're booking him. They're burying him on the way out, and like, yet the guy's the longest tenured, full-time roster member, I think, right there with the Miz. Yeah, I mean, Dolph's great. He's one. He can make anybody look great. He can be plugged in. Dolph can be one of your most rallied behind baby faces. He can also be one of your most despicable heels. He can play it great both ways. So yeah, nothing but praise for Dolph Ziggler as a performer.
And Jimmy, to pile on that, Dolph hasn't won in a long time, but the way they're presenting him and the matches he's having, it still feels like Balor got a big win tonight. At least I thought so.
No, it absolutely did, because Dolph Ziggler is that good, even in a losing role. Like, how do we say it, Justin, all the time? Getting over without going over. But Dolph Ziggler is now that veteran to help elevate talent, and he's so good that he could do it in by losing, and that does elevate the talent, despite the fact that I can't even remember the last time that Dolph actually won a match.
Yeah, he kept getting near falls in this one, and I was like, "Wait, is that a finisher, or is that like because he never wins?" So I don't know if these are supposed like the zigzag. I was like, "Is that a finisher, or is that not?" Because he doesn't ever finish it.
Yeah, not to interrupt you, but that's my only issue is finishers should remain finishers unless it's a big time match. Not just, you know what I mean? Yes, I get they were trying to elevate, but at the same time, it was like, could have done something a little different than his actual finish.
Yeah. We have a couple of questions here in the chat. Peter, great. Always good to see Peter. I feel like I haven't seen you in a while, Peter. Good to see you here. Asks, off topic, Justin, how beloved in Pittsburgh is Shane Douglas? Seems to not be as mentioned as other ECW legends, despite being their main eventer. Triple threat.
Well, Peter, I think that's, I mean, Shane, to hardcore wrestling fans and to fans that were watching back in the late 90s during ECW's prime, mid to late 90s, obviously everybody knows that he's from here, and he gets, if he's at a local show or something, he gets his pop, and he gets to cut his same Shane Douglas kind of anti-establishment promo and gets a pop. I think probably the reason what you're alluding to, Peter, is that the fact is all the other, he was one of the main event stars for ECW during their prime. I'm talking about ECW in its prime. He's pretty much the only one. You look at Tommy Dreamer, the Dudleys, Raven, Taz, I'm sure Rhino, and then towards the later end. He was the only one who never went to WWE after that. He had a stint in WWE that interrupted his ECW run. He had a stint in '95, if you remember, where he was Dean Douglas, where he had the menacing teacher gimmick, and it was par for the 1995 course. Everybody has to have an occupation, not any great creative behind it. He was just easy heel fodder for an emerging babyface in Shawn Michaels or Bret Hart. But, he had his best stuff in ECW. But after that, after ECW was bought, he never was part of the invasion angle that I can recall. He never had a stint. Even Raven has one of my favorite Jimmy Korderas matches that I was there for, Mania 17, the hardcore. Raven came back, had a little stint to do that. Obviously, Dreamer had a run. The Dudleys went on to have tremendous success. Rhino success. So he just didn't have that. So I think that's the perception. He just never got in front of that audience as the franchise Shane Douglas, the biggest television audience he was in front of. He was this throwaway occupational gimmick as Dean Douglas. I think that's probably where general perception comes from of why he's not put in that same conversation.
He was in WCW for a while too, but it was kind of during those downward slope days of WCW.
If you're in WCW in the year 2000,
you
don't need to put that on your resume.
I was a huge Shane Douglas fan. Triple threat. I used to love.
I got to tell you though, Shane Douglas, again, when you talk about people who are knowledgeable and can teach in this business and teach the younger talent, Shane Douglas was definitely one of those. I used to, he didn't really hold court, but when he gave advice, I would always like, well, what? I'm listening. Smart.
Yeah, smart. I mean, and then for those who don't know, I mean, he was trained by the great Dominic DeNucci. He was trained at the same time by Dominic as Mick Foley was. They were in the same training class. There's a few others that I'm leaving out. I apologize. But so yeah, I mean, to Jimmy's point, he knows what he's talking about. He just because he never got to have a WrestleMania match doesn't mean that he's not worth a damn. It's just public perception. To Peter's question, I think that's where he kind of gets lost in the shuffle. Is that's just kind of where even the Sandman, who you look at Sandman, you're like, other than New Jack, you look at Sandman, you're like, this is an ECW act that's over. I don't know if Vince and them can put on TV, but they did. He got to do some ECW One Night Stand stuff. At least he got that little crossover.
He was Hack in WCW.
He was Hack in WCW. How could we not forget that?
I love my late period WCW.
And Shane just never got that. So,
well, we have some more questions here. We have Bear Hudson asking, I have also heard rumors of Triple H and Nick Khan trying to get Cardi B involved in WrestleMania in LA, trying to make that event as big as possible. I mean, I'd assume at this point, and Jimmy, maybe you can speak more to it. At this point in the planning, I'm sure all options are open for that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And you think of where they are. They're in LA. And I know that there's a lot of celebrities out there who do watch wrestling, whether they're closet wrestling fans and don't want it to get out there, or some are just very open about it and say, hey, you know what? I enjoy watching professional wrestling because it is sports entertainment. I know people hate that term, sports entertainment, but that's exactly what it is. You know what I mean? It's there to entertain you. It's not, okay, I hate to put it this way. It's not a legitimate sport. It's very athletic, and there's, some talented athletic people involved in it. But at the same time, as we know, the outcomes are predetermined. So it is a form of entertainment. And these celebrities, so to speak, gravitate towards it. And we've seen them over the years. And I've had the pleasure of, interacting with plenty of them. One of them especially was the late, great Michael Clark Duncan from the Green Mile, who at WrestleMania 2000, during that hardcore match, there was, there's somebody behind me and he's heckling me in this deep voice. And I was like, who is this person? But this is WrestleMania. You can't turn around and start, going after someone. So at the point, the match ended and I heard the voice and I figured, okay, they're showing something on the Tron. Hey, you. And I turned around and I went, Green Mile. You know what I mean? So it was kind of cool. He was smiling. He had that big smile on his face. And then afterwards, I was out in the back. I was on the phone, on my cell phone, talking to my wife. And he come out. He goes, hey, sorry to bother you there. And I said, that's okay. He says, who are you talking to? I said, my wife. He says, give me the phone. I said, pardon me? He says, give me the phone. So I give him the phone. He's talking to my wife there. And then, he's having fun with her. And he says, okay, I'll give you back to your skinny leg husband. And then she's
he's tremendous. Obviously, rest in peace. He was tremendous in a movie that took place largely in Montreal. The Whole Nine Yards.
Yes.
With Matthew Perry and Bruce Willis. Oh my God. It's Frankie Figs. Just laugh out loud.
But a super, super, super nice dude.
Yeah. I recently rewatched Scorpion King. He's in that too.
Yes.
Armageddon.
Probably not his favorite. Probably not the movie most people think of him in, but he was jacked in that movie.
He had a great reoccurring for a couple episodes in Two and a Half Men in the Charlie Sheen years. He played the father of a girl that Jake was. Oh my God, that Jake was interested in, and he was just great comedic actor for a guy who judging a book by his cover, you wouldn't think he's going to be a comedic actor.
Oh, right. Ricky Bobby, he was hilarious. Don't you put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby. Good stuff. We also have James Curtis in the chat though, saying, I've seen Bobby Roode has posted on Insta. Is he injured? I've heard nothing of that. Have either of you heard anything about Bobby Roode?
Nope, nothing. You're just quiet. And sometimes if you're going to repackage someone, sometimes out of sight, out of mind is a good way to go. And hopefully he comes back bigger and gets used to his fullest potential.
He's glorious. I want to see. I've been a big fan of his for a long time. Back in his TNA, back in his Beer Money days, I was a big fan of him.
Good Canadian kid.
Yes. Oh, you're biased. That's why you like him. You just like the hometown people. No. We speaking of hometown people, we had Gable comes out and says that Canadians are toothless and dumb, and that put down really works everywhere. I've realized. Eventually, Gable calls out any Canadian, and it's the prize fighter that comes out. They have a long, tough fight, and KO wins with the pop-up power bomb. Otis and Gable attack Owens post-match, and he stuns one and power bombs the other. Jimmy, I mentioned this on Twitter. I'm going to ask you, has there been a bad match since Triple H took over?
On television, there's been matches that I won't say were bad, but could have been better. But this one here was a good match. It was a fun match. And obviously someone like a Chad Gable, who is very underrated for his in-ring ability. And also his comedic stuff is very good too. He's a good all-around guy. But Kevin Owens, it doesn't matter what you give him. He will make it work. And he showed it tonight. It doesn't matter who he's in the ring with. He's going to be the KO that everybody wants to see. And he was huge. Dare I say, the ovation he got when he came out was actually pretty. I knew he would get the pop being in Bizarro Land, Toronto, as King used to call it, and all the Canadian people, regardless of whether they're heels or baby faces, get cheered. But he got a bigger reaction than I expected.
Yeah, I mean, look, Kevin Owens, he's from a different Providence in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
But man, he's up there with the Trishes and the Edges and the Pops tonight. I mean, he's over like Rover.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy. It's like, he has the credibility of being in a WrestleMania main event with Stone Cold this past year. But Triple H has decided to hit the reset. And, okay, we're not going to make you just be a heel because you had to be a heel there. We're going to let the people want to cheer KO. He's kind of he has just kind of he's got that it that they the je ne sais quoi.
There you go. Very French from Quebec.
Very Canadian.
Yeah, LaBar can speak a little French every now and again. So yeah, it felt good. It did feel good. And I'm going to say this with Chad Gable. Chad Gable's always money with his role. I've said this many times. I know I'm not the only one, so I'm not trying to take credit for it. I've always said Chad Gable has that, obviously has the great athleticism. He has that awkward cockiness comedy to him that Kurt Angle had back in the day. And not to jump ahead, but they advertise later. They're obviously coming back here to Pittsburgh next week. Kurt Angle's going to be there. I would love to see a Chad Gable, Kurt Angle interaction. I feel like that could be grand potential of comedy chops.
If Chad Gable shows up during a Kurt Angle promo with the guitar in that hat,
the hat,
I will lose it.
They need to put those two together. That'll be so that could become what. Those two have the potential to make one of those moments similar to like Jay Lethal and Ric Flair back in the day. Maybe not because one of them is mimicking the other, but just one of those combinations of two people where you end up sharing the video of it forever. I think they could be absolutely money in the ring together.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine Kurt out there, or
backstage together.
Kurt, who is loved here in Pittsburgh, who is a legend here in Pittsburgh. I can imagine Kurt out there. And then all of a sudden, just being interrupted with "shoosh," and here comes Gable with the guitar and a little hat, and just but I'm probably booking the fantasy here. I don't want us to be disappointed if that's not what happens, but I really would love to see Chad Gable and Kurt Angle have some interactions. I think that'd be great.
Oh my goodness. The three I's: intensity, integrity, and the last one's intelligence. It's the Alpha Academy. They're all about being smart. It writes itself here, people. But that you've got me all excited about Raw next week, Justin.
Funny enough, Chad Gable used to be tag team partners with Jason Jordan. Jason Jordan was the illegitimate son of Kurt Angle. It should have been Chad Gable the whole damn time.
That's right. This is going to be.
Oh, see now you got the brain going again, Justin. Chad Gable comes out with a DNA test. Blah blah blah. Anyways, never mind.
Long-term storytelling. We never got the closure of Jason Jordan and Kurt Angle because Jason Jordan got injured. Long-term storytelling.
There you go.
And Gable has connections to people at DNA testing. We know from the Ezekiel storyline.
Oh,
we pull it all together. It's like Marvel Endgame, everything just coming together perfect.
And here in Pittsburgh is where Dr. Joseph Maroon, who heads up the medical policy, is based. This is where lawyer Jerry McDivitt, Vince's longtime lawyer, we have the legal, we have the medical. They can all be present. It's all there for the taking next week here in Pittsburgh.
I think they've been planning this for years. I think this is the moment they've been waiting.
This has been locked in a file with a confidential seal on the folder of here's long-term storytelling that's going to play out on August 29, 2022 in Pittsburgh, PA.
There you go.
People are like, long-term booking, The Rock and Roman in Hollywood at WrestleMania. Yeah, whatever. The real long-term planning is Gable and Kurt Angle in Pittsburgh on Raw. But Justin, there's a few things I want to throw your way about this that I as we talk about changes in Raw that I noticed in this segment alone. Obviously, KO with his old Tron back and old shirt back. Otis with facial hair again. And of course, the crowd chanting for Sammy at the end of the matchup. Justin, I'm just going to throw those things out there. Any comments on these little things I'm noticing watching this segment?
Well, the KO thing I already alluded to. It feels like we're just kind of hitting a reset, going back to what if we want KO to be a babyface, what worked best, what got over the most when he's a babyface. So they're just kind of going back to that. The Otis, we don't need to bring back his last name. He doesn't need to be Otis Dozier or whatever the hell he was. But I mean, there were tinkerings with his appearance and presentation that I think a lot of people just were kind of like, well, why? Why do you need that? I think it's all just a product of Jimmy says it. I'm stealing his lines here. Just keep it simple. This is pro wrestling is not supposed to be difficult. It can be creative, but there's a difference. It's not, the concept's not difficult. It's a good guy and a bad guy, and there's conflict. You can get creative with the swerves and turns, the swerves, bro. But at the base and core of it, it is simple. It is simple. Carnival. Understand? Come in. We got a bad guy and a good guy.
Yeah.
It just so happens that now pro wrestling has television, so you need to have backstory. You need to have evolution of characters and blah 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 blah. But at the core of it, it is simple. Low common denominator. Everybody down to little kids should be able to understand. Good guy, bad guy.
Yep. Quick shout out to Oz in the chat for the super sticker. Thank you so much for the support, Oz. You are greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for that. If you have a question, just throw it out there, and if I see it, I'll make sure to read it out for you. We move on, and Aaliyah, though, she wants to win the tag team championships, and Bayley says that she's stupid for showing up all alone, but Trish says she's not alone, and Bayley needs to put up or shut up, which leads to an Aaliyah versus Bayley match. And even though Aaliyah puts up a fight, Bayley gets the win, defeating the hometown hero. Jimmy, I want to start with you on this one. Was this the quote unquote right way to bring back Bayley with a give it away for free match, as opposed to waiting until Clash of the Castle for her in-ring return?
No, this is perfectly fine because, obviously she needs to get her reps in front of a live crowd. I mean, yes, you can go to the gym and you can work out in the ring and you can get some of the rust off and work out some of the kinks. But at the same time, the biggest factor is being out there in front of a crowd, getting used to working in front of the cameras and getting used to positioning of all the cameras and that sort of stuff. And again, you just beat a hometown girl who is going to get cheered regardless, because she is from Toronto and she's working in her hometown. And it wasn't a bad match, but I thought it worked for what it needed to be. And it got heat on Bayley, which was the goal here.
Justin, does this hurt or help the odds of Raquel and Aaliyah, or not matter?
I don't think it changes anything to that. I thought it was a nice showing for Aaliyah. I thought, one of the things I always love that, because we're all in nature to compare. One of the things I love that AEW has always consistently done since their inception is they play to the hometown. Why not play to who can help move a few extra tickets? So I like, obviously Trish and Edge are, Hall of Famers. I like, and then this is also where it comes into where, Vince didn't know the NXT talent by name or by great bio. Obviously, Triple H knows everybody that's there, and he has great communication with his best friend, who's now running NXT, it seems, and Shawn Michaels. That's crazy. The Click is now throw Road Dogg in there now. DX is running WWE. Anyway, so it makes sense. Put Aaliyah out there. See what she's got. See how she does in front of a live crowd. But you give her the advantage of having a live crowd rally behind her. So maybe she has a little slip up. They're not going to chant, you effed up or whatever. So this is the right situation to put her out there on Raw. I thought she did well. I thought Bayley has heat, so all that's accomplished. To my point earlier, I thought that this match would have been great to have Trish come out and be involved. Even if Bayley still needs to win, fine. Let Bayley win, then let Bayley do the chicken shit heel stuff after, and have Trish come out and just hit one thing, or if Trish, Jimmy said she's doing another project. If Trish has something in her contracts that she can't get physical right now, she could just run Bayley off just by her presence and just stand there and raise Aaliyah's hand. And now you have Trish, who's Toronto royalty, with a young superstar who's trying to make herself known, who's from Toronto. I thought there was a missed opportunity there. This is me getting to Monday morning quarterback. I had that luxury. We had that luxury. I don't know what went into the fact of what went into the decision making of why she wasn't there, but I really thought that would have tied the night together on the Trish Stratus storyline.
Yeah, I would have liked to see her be a little bit more involved in this one, but you're like you said, a million things could have happened, but all in all, they accomplished what they wanted to accomplish. Someone who also finally accomplished what they wanted to accomplish tonight was a gentleman from the crowd, and it happened during the tag team match between Miz and Ciampa versus Lashley and AJ Styles in a match that felt like 2K Universe mode running amok. The U.S. champion tag team division all teamed up and got to a tag team match. It kind of went as you expected until someone else came out of the crowd at AJ. But then Loomis came out from underneath a a SWAT team outfit and choked out, and Loomis choked out Miz and drug him to the back and kidnapped him. But everyone cheers the quote good guys as they continue to beat up Ciampa after his friend was kidnapped by a stranger. Justin, do you know, I guess do you know who the guy was, the other guy was, or who he was? But also, I don't know, break this one down for me.
Well, first off, I love the little Easter eggs. We know now the consistency is when AJ Styles is out there, and it's been AJ and AJ. We know that's when the disturbance has been happening. So you pay attention to that. They showed the backstage of AJ and Lashley walking to the ring. We know that things happen in the background are Easter eggs. Once again, AJ's walking, Adam Pearce and company, and there's a SWAT gear riot person mask standing there. It looks like something again is on fire or smoking. So if you're watching, I need to watch this match, not just for the entertaining action that's going to be in the ring, but this is going to be where that crazy thing's going to happen of somebody out of the crowd. And sure enough, it happened, but it happened twice. To your question, I don't know for sure who the first person was. I mean, they again ripped the mask off, the hood off, and they were being shuttled away. It kind of looked like I don't know, but I'm just going off of skin color and appearance. It looked like, Humberto or Angel Garcia, or I don't know who it was. I don't know that. I don't know, but that was kind of the mystery. It's what we want. And then obviously very clearly Dexter Lumis, who kidnaps the Miz in a very horror movie type imagery. And the crowd's going crazy because it's the Miz and nobody likes the Miz.
Right.
Again, I mean, this is just it's long term. It's been 3 weeks, but it's taking time and it's layered, and I'm invested. Because now at first we thought it was just Lumis. Now there's somebody else. How many more are there?
Right. And that adds to the story. And I love that you say that, Justin, because now even these matches that in a previous time you'd say, oh, this match doesn't matter, who cares? You're right. You're watching for something, so it matters, and you're interested and you care. No one, poor Miz, no one cared. I love Jimmy though on commentary. He's like, the Miz was kidnapped. And everyone's like, yeah, well, stuff goes on at WWE. Welcome to the party.
See, and that's the interesting thing here. Why Miz? And it's not technically a babyface move to kidnap someone in the middle of a match. You know what I'm saying? So yes, it led to a DQ finish, which people are forgetting about. People aren't even paying attention to what the finish of the match was. But I guess the official decision was a DQ win for Miz and Ciampa, despite the fact that Miz got kidnapped and dragged out of the arena in a rear naked choke or something like that. But the thing I'm curious about, I want to hear the explanation. I want to find out what Dexter Lumis's game plan is. And, I guess in a way that's the goal. You want people to be interested and invested in, hey, what's happening here? Your mind starts working and you start thinking, wait a minute, he kidnapped a heel. Then that's not very babyface move. Why would he go after someone like The Miz? Are they in cahoots somehow? If they're just trying to throw a cloud over everything? Who knows what's going on? There are a lot of question marks here. And there's nothing wrong with question marks as long as when you connect the dots later, underneath the question marks, they make sense.
That's the big thing, because in the past, there's been a lot of times that there's been question marks, but they have nothing to do with what we're getting to. And that's where it becomes frustrating.
And that's the encouraging thing right now, right? Is that this storyline maybe kind of sums up what we've been debating, is that now it feels like, again, fresh eyes, fresh control. It feels like in the past, if something like this was being done, it literally could be scrapped next week, or not. That there's no end game. There's at least I have this. I have this trust that there's an end game in sight. There's a date circled on the calendar of we want to be here by this time, and it's being booked backwards, which is how you're supposed to book long-term pro wrestling angles. You start, what's your finish line? You go backwards. And that's what's exciting. Is it feels like whatever happened this week, whatever happens next week in Pittsburgh, and I will be eyes and ears all around.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like it's all going to connect the dots.
Nice.
But, and you're right, because I have that same belief too. And it's not just because I like what's been happening or I was a fan of Black and Gold, but even when, as these changes started happening, they didn't just write off anything. They actually closed out every storyline that was happening, or at least continued it or something. They haven't written off anything, even the Ezekiel KO stuff or whatever. They all said, okay, we need to put a button in this or tie this up or whatever, so that, it would have been very easy for them to just say, well, forget that, like, move on from this.
The number one thing, so like you mentioned Ezekiel, Austin Theory, we'll get to in a second. The number one thing, I know we saw him in a match last week or 2 weeks ago. Omos has been one of the biggest pre Triple H, regime. He was the biggest project that's been. I wouldn't be shocked. I could see Triple H seeing, like, here's a guy that's freakishly 7'2", 7'4". Like, they don't grow on trees. We're not going to just discard him, but he's one that I could see. Maybe, to Jimmy's point earlier, out of sight, out of mind. Maybe we send him back down to NXT. Let's restart this with him. Let's let him dominate NXT and learn in that environment before we put the pressure of him being a top heel for Raw or SmackDown. He's the one guy that I'm watching that's been, from the previous regime, not given the same amount of TV time.
Right.
He was, to be fair, he wasn't in the middle of anything, though. He was kind of floating at the moment. So it's not like they took him off while he was in the middle of a rivalry. He just kind of
fair, but he and even Veer to a point. It's like we saw Veer last week, didn't see him this week. I feel like they're like on the fringe of like, what do we have for them right now? Are they ready for what we want to do? Can we utilize them in NXT? Will it benefit them? Veer's already been in NXT. Omos never was. So,
speaking of NXT, we had someone from NXT that I think we were all excited to see. The internet was abuzz about. Theory showed up to interrupt some guy's promo. No, I'm joking. So Johnny Gargano makes his return. He tells us who he is and why he was gone and why he came back, which I absolutely loved. And the crowd was hot for Johnny wrestling. Theory comes out and says that he's done all the things that Johnny has dreamed of. And now it's like Johnny is the rookie and Theory can show him the way. Loved that little bit. They go for a high five. Instead of giving high fingers, he gives him 5 toes. Justin LaBar, this was.
Now let Jimmy go first. I want Jimmy
to go for it.
I want Jimmy to go first on this.
No, I enjoyed it very much. I again, Theory is a guy who's on the rise now here on the main roster, so to speak, if you want to call it, if we still call it that, I guess, main roster. And having Johnny wrestling coming back, Johnny Gargano, you heard the audience and you saw they were panning through the crowd. People's reactions were like, "Oh my goodness, he's back! That's awesome!" Because I know people were expecting him maybe to jump over to AEW, where they thought he'd probably get a better treatment for, let's say. But again, this is another Triple H project from NXT that was working well, and he is good in the ring. He's good on the mic. He's got all the tools to succeed. And people who say, well, the WWE has this thing about guys who are big. Is Rey Mysterio big? He was world champion. Here's a guy who has who's smaller in stature, but also has the ability to engage an audience and draw them in. And we saw that tonight, that he was able to do that. So I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes. And I love the fact, like you said, that he put over the fact, he says, I dreamed about being the Intercontinental Champion. I dreamed about being the U.S. Champion. I dreamed about being World Heavyweight Champion. And I also dreamed about being at WrestleMania. He put everything over, including the secondary titles, which I've been an advocate for a long time now, where I want to make the IC title and the U.S. title, the main titles on the brands, and have, of course, your World Heavyweight Champion as your floater. But anyway, again, great to see him. Great reaction. I think, again, going to sit back and watch and hope that this goes the way I'm hoping it goes.
Yeah, Justin, I want you to just take it away.
No, I have so much with this. There's so many layers to this. First off, I want to congratulate him and everybody at the company, this was not leaked. There was no worst kept secret. There was no, even Wrestling Inc. or even some of the other outlets that do really good jobs of finding out scoops, whether you're supposed to find them out or not. They find them out.
Mm-hmm.
This was not out there. They kicked the third hour's ass coming back cold and just doing this. As a matter of fact, I think this third hour, I can't wait to see the ratings. I can't wait to see the viewership of this third hour, because I think this third hour, which is normally the worst hour just because it's the third hour, I don't think it's going to be that, but separate topic. Happy that they were able to keep it under wraps. Okay. Full disclosure, I started working the Indies in 2010. The company that I worked with based out of Cleveland, Ohio, was owned by Johnny's family. Johnny was the top babyface. So I had to obviously get to know Johnny and his family, and I worked there, whatever. I knew then, I could see it. I knew Johnny's favorite wrestler, Shawn Michaels, and I could see why. Johnny, who's not the biggest, and you saw that standing next to Theory. Theory's built, but he's not the biggest in overall stature. But even that, Johnny's smaller than him. Johnny has this baby face, rally behind him ability. In an era where, in an era where it's not cool to be babyface, right? If you're cool, you end up being a heel that everybody just cheers, and that's kind of against the point. Johnny was always, he always had that ability to whatever. To his promo, I loved his promo. He is a new father. I love that he mentioned Bluey, because he and I have joked. I have kids. The Australian cartoon kids comedy Bluey is like the number one thing that my kids want to watch. It's what his new kid wants to watch. So I love the promo. It was so human. It was a babyface promo, talking about the titles, talking about being a kid, wanting to achieve your goals. Who can't relate to that? Who can't relate to that? It was perfect. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, I can remember sitting, talking about ECW questions earlier. I can remember sitting in I think it was 2011. We finished a TV taping of doing 4 weeks at a time for DirecTV at Sports Time Ohio. Johnny, Greg Iron, Joe Dombrowski, myself, and Raven went and sat and watched a WWE pay-per-view on a Sunday night. And that was the first time I'd ever actually sat and really socialized with Johnny. And I realized this guy is a freaking encyclopedia. He remembers everything. And not in a nerdy, negative, cantankerous, intimidating way. He just wants to say, do you remember that? Let's talk about this match. Let's pull it up on YouTube. And granted, that was over a decade ago. This guy's a student of the game. He loves this. I felt in the promo. I'm happy for him. There's also they played off the NXT history between Theory and him. They did that in verbiage. But if you want to go a layer deeper, there's a interesting little subplot that I can't help to think that, again, Triple H might be leaning into. That Austin Theory was Vince's chosen guy on screen and his Money in the Bank. Johnny Gargano was very much the NXT Prince and Triple H's guy. There is a very interesting internet dynamic of let these two go at it, let Twitter be Twitter.
That is fantastic.
I love that.
That's going to be bobbling around in my brain now the rest of the evening, Justin. Thanks. You perfectly said. All I can say is I love this. I feel like they absolutely nailed this, and this was so gratifying to see just as a fan of Johnny Gargano and the Black and Gold brand, because he was always the first person I think a lot of people thought of when they said, can so and so make it on the main roster? Like, well, could Johnny Gargano, because of his size, make it on the main roster, whatever? But seeing him out there in that ring with the crowd going cuckoo bananas, as he used to say on NXT, I'm sold. I'm in.
And Jack, two more things real quick, because the Gargano thing I think is worth this talk. Two more things.
Okay.
One, I thought for 16,000 plus in Toronto, a very decent pop, natural pop. It did not sound enhanced for a guy who has not been on TV in 9 months. And oh, by the way, hasn't been on TV in 9 months, but he had a brief stint on Raw. If everybody remembers, there was a weird stint on the main roster that he and Adam Cole appeared, and they couldn't get back from Saudi in time, and Aleister Black was like, there's a weird time where there's like a random call up. Aside from that, Johnny Gargano has not been seen on USA or Fox. He's not been seen on Raw or SmackDown. He's been seen on USA for NXT. So I thought that there was a pretty good pop. It was visible that in the crowd there were rows of people chanting Johnny Wrestling. There was other people that were like, "Who is this guy?" Fair. And I thought his promo did great on trying to just quickly explain who he was and why he's credible. I thought that was really cool to see that after 9 months, he still had that kind of response, and great on him to recall, I won important titles in this building. The other thing I got to give credit to our colleague here on Wrestling Inc. who's on the podcast, Alfred Kenowa. Alfred tweeted something that I don't think is. Alfred tweeted about, and I retweeted it. He said, AEW Dynamite is in Cleveland this week, which is where Johnny's from. AEW is in Cleveland this week, but they won't benefit from the Johnny Gargano might show up bump. The chess match continues, which I think is real because I have seen people speculate, where's Johnny? When's he going to show up? We thought he might show up a few weeks ago when Ciampa was in a big match and Raw was in Cleveland. Didn't happen. AEW Dynamite's in Cleveland this week. As Jimmy said, he's a guy who seemed like maybe a prime AEW candidate to be signed. So you can go into Dynamite thinking, ooh, maybe Johnny's going to pop up. And so it is an interesting decision. Why did they not have him? Why did WWE not have him show up and stop his old tag team partner Ciampa a few weeks ago in Cleveland? Why choose it cold with no promotion in Toronto 2 days before AEW? I think there is a chess game worth noting there. I thought I retweeted. I thought Alfred had a really good tweet to point that out.
I hope there was, because I love it when wrestling companies go at it. It's always fun to watch them go back and forth. So that is a very good note by Alfred there.
Yes.
We got a couple of chats here, by the way, and we got Apox Music saying, man, what a great time. Being in that crowd was amazing. The Triple H era is a moment right now. Trish, Johnny, Daddy Wrestling, Edge, what a show. Who got the biggest pop of the night, Apox? I'm guessing probably Edge at the end, but let me know who you think really kind of stole the moment as far as pops go. But It's Z also says, all these returns, where does that put Cody, Jimmy?
Well, Cody, again, is a long-term project because he's injured right now. He's on the shelf. And, I don't think it affects him in the least because he's already been established and people know Cody. It's a matter of guys like Johnny Gargano getting to familiarizing him with the audience that may not be as familiar with him. Yes, the hardcore audience knows exactly who he is, like Justin said, but it's just getting the other audience interested in him. And I think tonight was a good start at getting people to go, oh, this guy has a plan. This guy has a dream. This guy has a direction. Let me see where this guy leads me.
Well, and that Gargano was confronted by a guy who's been seen in segments with Brock Lesnar and other main star. It helps the credibility along. To the Cody point, obviously you never want to see somebody injured. Obviously Cody injured was unfortunate timing that he was so early back on his return with WWE that happened. He seems like he's a timeline that's built for Royal Rumble, right? The other interesting thing, again, the regime change. Cody had said it's been reported, and Cody said some things, whatever. Cody was heavily pursued by Vince and Bruce Pritchard. When he became a free agent and left AEW, like they came to him, and that was that. Well, again, Vince not in that same seat anymore. Cody being on the shelf gives time for him to build a rapport with Triple H, with Triple H being in the position he's in. Obviously, everybody's going to go back to the famous Cody thing in AEW where he has the throne and he sledgehammers the throne and the references that could have been to Triple H, right? Him being on the shelf actually gives time for him and the new regime to get on the same page, talk about what they want to do, hash out any differences they have, and get it handled behind closed doors. So when he is ready to come back, everybody can make the most money possible out of it.
I think Cody will be just fine once he comes back.
I do too, but I think it's worth mentioning that it gives him a chance to,
right.
Yeah, and like you said, Justin, he's got a Royal Rumble time frame. Good things for him. Now, this is where we get to the main event, and Damian Priest, Edge, advertised, built up. Love that they did all this. But Jimmy, my favorite part about this is Damian Priest comes out, and I was like, oh, we're at the main event already. This was the first Raw in as long as I can remember where I thought to myself, oh, wow, this is the main event. And it didn't feel like Oh, thank goodness we're at the main event.
Right.
I don't know about did you have that same feeling of this? I felt like this was the first time in a very long time that Raw didn't drag to me. I got through it and I was like,
Yep.
wow, we're chugging along.
It's funny you said that, because as soon as they started introducing Damian Priest, I looked at my watch to see what time it was, and I went,
Yeah.
"Oh, okay, they're giving this match some time." But at the same time, I didn't expect it to go just yet. So I'm glad they gave it the time. And you saw that the crowd, despite, popping huge for Edge and stuff like that, it was a little bit of a struggle at first, keeping the crowd invested, but by the time they were done, they bought in. They were invested big time. Hey, it was a good, I shouldn't say good. It was better than good main event for Monday Night Raw.
Yeah, it was good, and I thought Damian Priest came out looking very much a threat to a legend like Edge. Of course, there's some shenanigans, but of course, the Canadian hits a Canadian destroyer in Canada and eventually hits a spear and gets the win. Post-match, though, Justin, I think everyone's going to be talking about, Beth Phoenix shows up with a chair and saves the day. Do you think we're going to get a different legend in the ring again?
Maybe, but the question mark is what's great about this. Edge gets the victory, which you kind of need to do. This is I don't know if they had a local house show main event advertised for this. I can't imagine you're going to try to put anybody else out there in a match, even dark, after Edge. So you send the crowd home happy with the thought of that, or with the sight of Edge getting a victory. But I can see Edge also saying, look, I'm not here every week. These guys are. We got to keep we got to keep the heat on them. We got to keep their credibility. So seeing the post-match shenanigans, but then Beth gets in there. So again, it's a way to go off the air happy. It's also open-ended. If they want to do Beth and Edge versus Priest and Rhea at a future show, you have the groundwork. If not, it's just something, Beth coming to the aid of her husband, and again, hometown crowd goes home happy. So it was a well done finish. I thought it kind of like checked every box, left you with options. I liked it, and the match was to Jimmy's point. They masterfully done, of course, by Edge. They got it back when they got around to the final leg of things. Everybody was there, hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, I felt like this was, and Jimmy, this is a very different WWE in a lot of ways, how they deal with the hometown crowd. I think in the past, again, under a different era, I think Edge would have lost and gotten beat down, and we would have gone home saying, boy, the bad guys sure look like jerks tonight. But instead, all the hometown heroes were presented like hometown heroes. Aaliyah took a loss, but it was a gutsy loss against the veteran kind of loss.
Exactly.
Totally different.
Yeah, totally different, because the prevailing thought is, wow, we beat someone in their hometown using some kind of shenanigans, some kind of diabolical means. That's how you get heat on these people, and that was the idea, because you want heels to get heat, and the mindset back then was definitely, hey, what better way to get heat than have some heel cheat in someone else's hometown to beat them in their hometown. In front of that audience. So that was the prevailing thought. But this, again, being the last match, to Justin's point too, I can't imagine what could have gone on afterwards in a dark match, but probably there was some mic work after. I wish I was there to see what was said afterwards, but probably Beth and Edge got to send the home crowd happy. Let's say.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. Like next week in Pittsburgh, they're advertising locally dark. Rollins and Riddle for a match. I can't imagine in Toronto you're gonna have that finish with Edge and Beth Phoenix, and you're gonna like bring Seth and Riddle out. Maybe if but I mean, you just gave the crowd a 30-minute main event,
right?
30, I don't see what more you can really give them.
You could do a little schmoz where, like I said, Edge and Beth are cutting a promo, have some heels come out and interrupt them, and then have Edge and Beth take them out, and leave them laying and send the home crowd happy that way. But to have a match afterwards, I don't see the benefit of that. That's for sure.
You could even do Beth and Edge having some fun married commentary, playing off signs. I mean, you could just have them kind of do a little bit of a roast for a few minutes.
Yeah.
And that'd be that. I don't see any pro wrestling match that you're going to trot out there that anybody's going to be have anything left in the tank at that point for.
Agreed.
Yeah. Well, all in all, this was a really good episode of Raw. They've been on a good run lately, and I was thinking today, just to wrap it up, and we'll do final thoughts. Justin, we'll have you go first, but I guess just first, is Raw the best network TV wrestling show going right now? As you compare to SmackDown and NXT and maybe even Dynamite, and I know that it's dicey to compare shows to the other companies, but
yeah, I mean, it's a little. It is apples to oranges because again, Raw is 3 hours, so for it to be good, I think we're grading on a different scale because 3 hours is 3 hours. I think it's some of the best Raw. I think it's some of the best stuff we've seen on Raw, and things are mattering, and we know it's going to matter, and so that's there. I don't do the SmackDown podcasts here on Wrestling Inc., so admittedly, I do not watch SmackDown in full live. I do watch it, but usually it's in pieces over the weekend. But I'm a huge Karrion Kross fan, so I'm loving what's happening there, and there's some other things. It's all apples and oranges, but I feel like WWE just has momentum, positive momentum, and they're going into this huge show in Cardiff, Wales. They haven't been over, and there's just a lot of things to be excited about for them. And look, I'm not poo-pooing AEW. AEW's got their big show in Chicago here. They certainly have a little bit more controversy in the news of what's going on internally there, and I think they need to kind of clean up shop. But they got some things to be excited about as well, which we'll talk about on Wednesdays. So it is certainly one of the more intriguing times to be a wrestling fan and analyst, as we are, because there's a lot of things that play both on screen and off screen.
And to be fair, I like AEW as well. I'm not trying to be one of those guys that pick sides. I do not want the smoke on Twitter for that. But I'm just saying I'm really enjoying Raw right now. And Jimmy, before you give your thoughts, we got a super chat from Dylan who says Edge got on the mic post Raw and retiring in 2023 in Toronto.
Oh wow!
Ooh,
so,
wow.
Okay. See. Yeah, well, what I will say to that, thank you, Dylan, for giving us that news. But at the same time, it's very rare when talents nowadays get to go out on their own terms. And if that's the way he wants to go out, and he's ready to go out because he, like you said, he's a married man with some young girls as for his children. He wants to be a dad too. And if that's the right time for him, if he feels that's the right time, then good for him.
Hey, Dylan, did he say, or do we know, do they have a date in Toronto in 2020? Like, do we know if there's like an event that's SummerSlam, or is there an event that's happening already that we know? Yeah,
because the only other date after tonight's in Toronto is post Christmas. There's a live event on the 28th. Here, cheap plug.
So it won't be there.
Yeah, exactly. But I thought somebody in the chat earlier said something about SummerSlam, but I thought SummerSlam was going back to
Nashville.
Well,
August, Nashville is a short list. August.
Yeah. Unless they're doing TV in Toronto next year in August again, I don't know.
And they'll just build to that Raw or whatever, like they did tonight.
Right. Yeah.
It looks like a few people. Yeah, August Toronto 2023 is what they're saying. So
amazing. Cool.
Interesting. Well, that makes
Jimmy, you gotta ref it. The man wrote your foreword in your book. You gotta ref it.
And he was also responsible for me refereeing the main event of WrestleMania 24 between him and Taker.
Right.
So it would be an absolute honor for me to referee his last match. So
you got to make it happen.
You're so polite and reserved. If I got to be the obnoxious one to advocate, if I got to be your Paul Heyman and advocate for you, I'm going to advocate for you. You got to do the damn thing.
You go ahead, because you know me.
I'm sending an email to Stephanie right now. I want this.
All right,
and I'll be the timekeeper.
Oh, cool. That would be absolutely cool.
I don't know. I'll be the guest judge at ringside.
Jack, I'm the ugly one. I'll be the timekeeper. You're the pretty one. You can be ring announcer.
Okay, yeah.
With that hair.
I'll do the ring announcing. That's what I'll show up and Rome will be like, Jack, who are you? Who are you? What are you doing?
No, I'm Mark Eaton territory. You're
get out of here, Rome. My time.
You just remember, like in the old days, you have to have that pencil.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
If you're the timekeeper, in case the referee loses contact, they got to go home. That pencil goes in the mouth.
Pencil in the mouth. I got you.
I
won't abandon you. I won't leave you stranded.
That happened to me at WrestleMania 4, believe it or not, where this was before the IFBs. And do you remember the tournament? They had the tournament going on. So it was a tournament match with Rick Rude and not Rick Rude.
Was it Brett and
no, that was in the Battle Royal. This was in the tournament where it was Jake. Was it Jake Roberts? Yeah, Jake Roberts and Rick Rude. And they were supposed to go 15-minute time limit draw, but there was a spot that leads up to the 15 minutes. And I'm forgetting to look at Mark because we used to get our time cues from the timekeeper.
Yeah,
flashing hand signs and stuff like that. And when the pencil was in the mouth, you knew time to go home. I don't know. I was in a different world. I wasn't paying attention to Mark. I finally glance over and I see him standing, almost jumping up and down with the pencil in his mouth. It's almost bit in half. And I just turned around, go home. Anyway.
All the craziness that happens that we don't even.
At least that was pay-per-view. We're talking about Raw. We got to be off the USA's cutting the plug at a certain time here.
Good point.
So I'll make sure that I'm pogo sticking with a pencil in my mouth at you. All right.
Tremendous.
Well, that does it for us. Make sure to follow at Wrestling Inc. across social media, but also make sure to check out the NXT after show tomorrow, the Dynamite after show on Wednesday, the SmackDown Rampage episode on Friday. Justin, where can the world find you?
At Justin LaBar, Twitter, Instagram, do all the things.
Mm-hmm.
Hit me up. Again, I would say, please tweet me. Where in the world are you when you're watching, listening? How are you watching, listening? Leave a comment, tell a friend, like, share, do all the things. We really appreciate it. It goes a long way. It really does.
And it absolutely does, by the way. It really does mean the world. And Jimmy, where can the world find you?
They could find me at Twitter, Instagram, all the social media platforms there at Jimmy Korderas. Unless your Instagram, it's at Real Jimmy Korderas because somehow somebody got that. But you can find me weekdays every Monday through Friday with my Ref and Rants on all my social media outlets. Yes, I have my own Ref and Rant cup where I drink my coffee in the morning. And you can get t-shirts too if you want. Look at that. I happen to have one on right now. And prowrestlingtees.com. But you can catch myself here with you guys on Monday nights and on Wednesday nights with Justin and Issa, where we review Dynamite. And to those of you out there who keep thinking that I am anti-AEW, listen, I enjoy AEW because we talked about this earlier. Hey, we critique everybody. That's what we do here. But we also enjoy all wrestling. It doesn't matter to me whether it's WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, which doesn't get enough love, and MLW, NWA. It doesn't matter. I want it all to succeed.
It's a buffet.
Yeah, man.
Just have your taste buds ready.
Yeah, smorgasbord.
Lots of good stuff out there. Speaking of good stuff, you can follow me at Real Jack Farmer across all social media. That's where you can see all the nonsense I'm working on. That does it for us. I guess we'll see you all next week or on NXT After Show tomorrow on Wrestling Inc.